The lights went out first, and that told me everything I needed to know. I was standing beside Princess Valara when the chamber fell into darkness, and before the emergency lamps even flickered on, I had already counted 3 sounds that did not belong in a peaceful summit hall. A hiss of a door seal breaking, a soft thud of boots landing from a ceiling vent, and the click of something small and metallic being armed. "Elias," Valara whispered, her 4 eyes catching the dim glow of the backup lights. "Tell me you heard that too." "I heard it," I said quietly. "Stay close to me. Don't run yet." She trusted me the way no one else in this station did. To the nobles here, I was just the human they hired, because humans were cheap and had no political ties to any of the great houses. No one worried I might be secretly loyal to a rival kingdom, because humanity did not have a kingdom in this part of the galaxy at all. We were the newest species anyone had met, still trying to prove we belonged among the stars. Most of the guards from other species had claws, venom, armored skin, or minds that could sense danger before it happened. I had none of that. I only had training, patience, and a plan that no alien mind had ever been built to expect. The main door hissed open, and the first of them stepped through. He was tall, with a smooth gray face and eyes like polished stone, dressed in a dark uniform with no house symbol. A hired blade. Behind him came another, then another, spreading out along the walls with practiced silence. I counted them as they entered, the way I had been trained to count anything that mattered. 5, 10, 15. By the time the last one slipped through the door and sealed it behind him, I had counted 20. 20 armed assassins in a room built for diplomacy, and one princess who had done nothing wrong except be born into a family that others wanted gone. Valara's breathing quickened beside me. I could hear it, quick and sharp, the sound of someone trying very hard not to panic. "There are too many," she said under her breath, "even for you." "There are exactly the right number," I said, and I meant it, though my heart was pounding harder than I let my voice show. "Get behind me. Whatever happens, don't stop moving toward the corridor on your left." She did not argue. That was the thing about Valara that made her different from the other nobles who barely knew my name. She listened. The lead assassin raised a hand, and the others stopped moving, waiting for his signal. He studied me for a moment, tilting his head the way someone studies an insect they are deciding whether to bother stepping on. "The human," he said, his voice flat and amused. "They told us there would be a guard. They did not tell us it would be something this small." I did not answer him. I was already moving my weight onto the balls of my feet, already measuring the distance between the long table behind me and the narrow corridor to my left, already deciding which piece of broken furniture would become useful in the next few seconds. Talking was for people who had time to spare. I did not. "Kill the guard first," the leader said. "Take the princess alive." 6 of them came at once, which was their first mistake. They expected me to plant my feet and try to hold the center of the room, the way a lone defender in their stories always did, standing brave and doomed against overwhelming numbers. That is not how humans fight when we know we are outnumbered. We do not stand in the open and hope, we use the room. I grabbed the edge of the long conference table and shoved it hard, tipping it onto its side so it crashed down between us and the 6 closing in. The crash bought me a second and a half, no more, but a second and a half was enough. I pulled Valara with me toward the narrow corridor, the one I had already picked out the moment we walked into this room hours earlier, back when it was still just a boring diplomatic meeting, and not a fight for her life. A guard who does not study the room before trouble starts is not doing the job. I had walked this station for 3 days. I knew every hallway, every vent, every door that locked from only one side. The assassins did not. They had a floor plan. I had a memory of walking it myself. The corridor was narrow enough that only one of them could reach us at a time. That was the whole plan. The simple plan I had told Valara about with such calm certainty. Force them into a line. Do not let 20 become 20. Make it 1. Again and again, until the numbers stopped mattering. The first one to reach the corridor was fast, faster than his stone-colored eyes suggested, and he came in low, with a weapon meant to disable rather than kill. I stepped into him instead of away, closing the distance before he could bring the weapon to bear, and used his own momentum to put him into the wall. He went down hard and did not get back up right away. The corridor behind him was already filling with the next two. "Move," I told Valara, pushing her further down the passage toward the security door at the far end, the one I had quietly flagged as an emergency route the very first evening we arrived. "Keep going. Do not look back." "What about you?" "I'll catch up." "Go." She hesitated only a heartbeat before she ran, her long coat trailing behind her, and I turned to face the corridor full of enemies alone. The next two assassins came in together, thinking 2 against 1 in a narrow space was still an advantage. It was not. In a space this tight, 2 bodies moving at once get in each other's way, and I only needed a fraction of a second of hesitation to use it. I ducked under the first one's reach, drove my shoulder into his chest to knock him off balance into his companion, and kept moving forward instead of backward. That surprised them. Every instinct in their training told them that a losing fight moves away from danger. Mine had been trained the opposite way. Advancing when you are supposed to retreat breaks the rhythm an enemy expects, and a broken rhythm is worth more than any weapon. More of them were pouring into the corridor now, shouting instructions to each other, in a language I did not fully understand, but I did not need to understand the words to read the panic creeping into their voices. Their leader had told them this would be simple. A quick strike, a princess taken, a job finished before station security could even respond. They had not planned for a fight that refused to end quickly. I kept them bottlenecked, 1 body's width at a time, using the corridor walls, using a fallen support strut, using anything within reach. My arms ached. My side had taken a glancing hit from something that would leave a deep bruise by morning, but I did not stop, and that was the part they could not understand. Their kind, calculated odds constantly, weighing injury against reward, deciding at what point retreat became the smarter choice. I did not run that calculation. I had trained for years to simply keep going until the job was finished, because that was what my instructors had always said separated humans from every other species we had met among the stars. We were not the strongest, we were not the fastest, but we were the ones who did not know how to quit once we had decided something mattered. And Valara mattered. Somewhere behind me, an alarm finally began to wail, the sound bouncing off the metal walls. I had triggered it the moment the lights first went out, a small, silent signal built into my wrist unit that only station security could see. Help was coming. I just needed to make sure there was still a hallway to defend when it arrived. 2 more assassins fell back from the corridor, calling something to the ones behind them, and I realized with a strange, distant clarity that they were starting to hesitate. 20 against 1 guard should have taken less than a minute. It had already taken 3, and the numbers pushing into this narrow space kept shrinking one at a time, instead of overwhelming me the way their plan demanded. The leader shoved his way to the front of the group, his calm expression from earlier now replaced with something sharper, something closer to real anger. "Enough," he snapped. "Everyone at once. Now." That was the mistake I had been waiting for. A narrow corridor cannot hold 20 bodies rushing forward together any more than it could hold 6. They crushed into each other trying to force their way through, weapons tangling, shoulders knocking against the walls, and for a moment, the entire group became its own obstacle. I used that moment. I grabbed the nearest one, and turned his own forward momentum into a fall that took 2 others down with him, then slipped past the tangle toward the security door where Valara waited, her hand pressed against the release panel, watching me with wide, frightened eyes. "Go through," I said, my voice rough from the fight. "Seal it behind us." We passed through together, and the heavy door slid shut with a solid, final sound, cutting off the shouts behind us. It would not hold forever, but it did not need to. Through the small, reinforced window in the door, I could already see the flashing lights of station security teams pouring into the far end of the corridor, moving fast, moving in numbers that finally matched what we had been facing. Valara leaned against the wall, breathing hard, her hand pressed to her chest. "You planned this," she said, staring at me. "The corridor, the door, all of it." "I walked this station 3 times before the summit even started," I told her. "A guard who only reacts to danger is already too late. I look for every narrow space, every door that locks, every route out, long before anyone needs it. Tonight I just needed it sooner than I expected." "They had 20, she said quietly. "You had none." I had one, I said. Myself. And apparently that was enough to make them nervous. Because a fight against a human does not end the way their calculations expect. We are not built to stop simply because the odds look bad. She studied me for a long moment, something in her expression shifting from fear into something steadier, something closer to respect. The other nobles call your people primitive, she said. They say humans are hired because you are cheap, not because you are capable. Let them think that, I said. It has kept us underestimated for a long time, and being underestimated has kept people like you alive tonight. Security teams reached the sealed door moments later, cutting through the lock with practiced speed, and the corridor beyond filled with the sound of the remaining assassins being taken into custody. Their leader was among them, his earlier confidence completely gone, replaced by a kind of stunned silence as he was led away in restraints. Whatever report he had been given about a lone human guard, it clearly had not prepared him for the truth of what that guard would do when everything went wrong at once. Later, after the medics had checked us both and the chamber had been secured, Valara found me standing near the observation window that looked out over the stars beyond the station. She walked up quietly and stood beside me instead of behind me, which I noticed immediately, because for 3 days she had always kept herself slightly behind my shoulder out of habit, the way royalty is taught to stand near their guards. You could have run when the lights went out, she said. Some of my own guards did, in the chaos. I do not blame them. 20 against 1 is not a fight anyone expects to win. I did not think about winning, I admitted. I thought about the corridor, the door, and the 90 seconds I needed to hold both until help arrived. That is the whole plan. It was never complicated. Find the narrow space. Force one enemy at a time. Do not stop until the numbers run out, or the help shows up. Humans have been doing that since long before we ever left our own world. She was quiet for a while, watching the stars drift slowly past the window. The other delegates are already talking, she finally said, about what happened tonight, about what it means that a single human held off 20 trained blades in a hallway with nothing but his hands and his mind. It means they should stop underestimating us, I said. Not because we are stronger, or faster, or more dangerous than anyone else here. We are usually none of those things. But we do not give up simply because the numbers look impossible. That has always been the one thing your kind and every other species we have met has struggled to understand about mine. Valara turned to look at me then, and for the first time since I had taken this posting, there was no distance in her eyes at all, only quiet gratitude, and something that looked very much like trust, earned rather than assigned. Thank you, Elias, she said softly, for not running. I was never going to, I told her. That was the plan from the beginning, simple as that. Outside the window, the station's lights slowly returned to full strength, chasing away the last of the emergency dimness, and somewhere in the halls behind us, the sound of the ambush faded into the ordinary hum of a summit, slowly returning to order. The nobles who had once looked past me without a second glance, now watched from a careful distance, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by something far more cautious. They had come expecting a soft target and a quick, quiet victory. Instead, they had learned, the way every species eventually learns when they meet humanity up close, that being underestimated was never a weakness. It was simply the space we needed to prove exactly how far we were willing to go for the people we chose to protect. And as far as I was concerned, that lesson was only just beginning.